Hello and welcome to this year's edition of the Runnin with the Herd podcast, powered up by Herd Nation and a part of the Rivals Network, sponsored by Mike Gwynn Insurance Agency. I'm your host and the producer of the Runnin with the Herd podcast, Aaron Coleman. I'm going to be joined here momentarily by Josh Stowers. We got a great show for you here today. We're going to be giving away 2 4-packs of tickets to see AEW live. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be in Huntington, so you definitely don't want to miss that. The Marshall Thundering Herd's coming off of a win over Middle Tennessee. We're going to be talking a lot about that too. And we're going to be previewing the upcoming matchup between the Marshall Thundering Herd and the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns in a rematch of last year's Sun Belt Championship. So you definitely want to take a look. You definitely want to take a listen to that. It's going to be a great show. We have Josh coming up here in just a little bit, and should be a great show. If you want to chime into the show or if you want to win the tickets, you can chime in. We have live viewer comments that show up on StreamYard. If you have a comment about the Herd game, if you got a comment about anything that went on with the Herd as it relates to them winning the game against Middle Tennessee, what they have coming up against Louisiana, you can chime into that discussion as well. We are streaming live on both X and YouTube currently, and the archive will be posted up to Herd Nation and Old Fairfield on the 24/7 Rivals Network, so you definitely don't want to miss that. So, before we give away some tickets to some wrestling, how about that win over Middle Tennessee State? Carlos Del Rio Wilson established himself firmly as QB1. He was the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Week, celebrated a birthday. Happy birthday, Carlos. And should be an exciting matchup this coming Saturday, ESPN Plus in Louisiana, to take on the Cajuns, who are struggling right now. Josh and I will get into that in just a little bit. But a couple of the takeaways that I had from the matchup against Middle Tennessee is such. One, we established who QB1 is. I just mentioned that. Two, we uncovered some weapons, some guys that are going to be heavily relied upon in the offensive scheme. Guys like Floyd Lacey, Toby Payne, obviously, from last year's team. And you can't help but wonder, like, what's this team going to look like when they put 4 good quarters together, offensively and defensively, and on special teams as well. So far, through the first few games, we have not seen that as much. But I do think that they are turning the corner as it relates to putting those good 4 quarters together. And I do think that they could do that. So if you want to chime in to talk about what Marshall needs to do to put 4 good quarters together against Louisiana, you could do that. As I previously stated, we are streaming live on both X as well as YouTube. So should be a fantastic show. How about we give away some tickets, shall we? Listen for the trivia question here in just a little bit. But AEW Collision is making its debut over at the Marshall Health Network Arena in Huntington this Saturday. That's this Saturday, September 27th. See, the biggest names in All Elite Wrestling is they bring you out of your seat for an unforgettable night of pro wrestling action. Go to AEWTix.com for tickets and more information. And use the code 30 promo to take 30% off selected seats while supplies last. So we have 2 4-packs of tickets to the winners. So all we would need, once you answer the trivia question correctly, is a name, email, and telephone number, and the tickets will be sent to your mobile phone the day of the show. So be prepared to see some great action over at the arena on Saturday. So, with that being said, let's bring him in, the man, the legend, Josh Stowers. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Pretty good, buddy. How about you?
Oh, not bad, not bad. Just did a little open, talked a little bit about Marshall's win over Middle Tennessee. Pretty solid win there, and we're trying to give away some tickets here real quick. So let's do that. All right, so here is the first question. What former AEW World Champion recently became part of the Dynamite announcing team? What former AEW World Champion recently became part of the Dynamite announcing team? You could put in your comment live on StreamYard, and if you're correct, you win a 4-pack of tickets to the AEW wrestling event over at the Marshall Health Network Arena in Huntington this Saturday, September 27th. So if you know the answer to that question, feel free to chime in. We will read your answer on the air, on the live stream, and you will win one of the 4 packs of tickets. So let me repeat the question again. What former AEW World Champion recently became part of the Dynamite announcing team? You might want to check that out. So, while we're waiting for the answer to that question, Josh, what were your impressions of the Middle Tennessee game this past Saturday? I mean, they had a 2-hour and 12-minute lightning delay, which kind of made things a little bit more difficult in terms of chemistry and trying to get everything together. But what were your impressions of the Marshall win?
Yeah, man. The delay was unfortunate. And the reason I say that is because, we were coming off a really, really, solid drive there. And the way that we took the ball down the field there, it kind of obviously pushed the momentum our way. And, at that time they were struggling, on their first drive. I mean, they struggled to move the ball at all. And, I think if we can hold them to a 3-and-out or just to a punt and just go right back at it again and possibly go up 14-0. I mean, that game, it may just ultimately honestly be a blowout because, you had the delay and then, obviously, they came back out and, they hit the big run. We had a safety come down, pretty hard into the box and kind of took a bad angle, maybe overplayed the ball a little bit. And that's what kind of opened up that run for him. And in those next couple minutes, it just seemed like it was like fireworks. I mean, I think, there were whatever it was, 28 points scored or something crazy, like in the next, 5 to 6 minutes of gameplay. It just seemed like, the game went back to, ultimately went back to 0-0 after the delay. And, it felt like, we came back out, at least on defense, not settled at all. I mean, we missed tackles. Tony talked about it in his press conference. We, overplayed angles. It just a number of mistakes defensively. And really just things that were fixable. That's what was, what's so aggravating. And you could hear it, in his voice at halftime. I mean, he was pretty disgusted with, the effort there in the first half defensively. And obviously, we got some things cleaned up there in the second half and most certainly in the fourth quarter, to finish out the game strong. But again, there in the, whatever it was it the second quarter or maybe early third quarter when we had driven the ball, down their throat with the run game. And then we tried that reverse, to Bradshaw. And, there was, a miscue on the exchange. And, they obviously, they got the ball back and went down and scored there, pretty quickly. They may have in the second quarter, but nonetheless, that was just another situation where it just felt like we had all the momentum. And, because, I mean, we were literally just running the ball down their throat. And then, we tried that and then it backfired and, they went down and scored real quick and it kind of gave the momentum back to them. So, that's another situation where, if we don't run that play, and we just continue with what was working? Do we score there and really just in some ways put the game away? Because in that game, it felt like, 2 full scores was a big difference, because
Right.
middle, much like us in some cases, they've struggled to score, this season. So, 2 scores was a huge difference. But nonetheless, we closed out the game really strong. Fourth quarter was just pretty much dominance on our part. So you really have to come away from that game, feeling good about the momentum there. We were efficient. The fumble, I believe, was our only turnover. We were pretty effective in the punt game. Totten, excellent game, punting the ball, or special teams. I said, the special teams game, not the punt game, but the punt game too. Totten was, I think it was, like I said, like 50.5 yards per punt, which is just incredible. It felt like the game as a whole, short of some miscues defensively, I thought we played pretty well. It was obviously Carlos's best game of the season by a wide margin. It was good to see. It was good to see us, be effective in the passing game, and it was good to see, Floyd was, kind of like what, really what I expect out of him, to be honest. I think, I think we just have to find more ways to get the ball in his hand. And,
For sure.
Almost in a situation too, something I've been looking at and thinking about is, where he's got a little bit of a background at running back is, maybe on third down, just to get more speed and playmaker ability on the field is, maybe line him up at running back and, let him come out of the backfield and catch the ball there, and kind of get a linebacker on him or something like that to really, present like a mismatch. But like I said, a well played game. Anytime a 14-point win on the road, hard to be upset about that. Like I said, there are a few things to clean up. Hopefully, we did that this week and going on the road again to Louisiana.
Yeah, like I said, definitely something that you want to see as far as the herd, as far as moving the ball. I mean, Carlos played well and did his thing, but I mean, the defense has to be shored up as far as like tackling and all of that. And I think that it's something that Coach Gibson talked about a lot in his presser, but I think that the team is slowly starting to come together. I mean, and when you have 72 new players, you're going to have some hiccups. You're going to have some discrepancies. And it sounds like right now, like they're starting to get that stuff cleaned up. So it sounds like they're getting together and doing their thing at just the right time. It really is. So with that being said, we turn our attention to Louisiana, and Coach Desermo's team is no stranger to the Thundering Herd. And obviously it's one of those things where when you look at it, it could tell the tale as far as what's been going on this season. And I think it's a winnable game for the Herd. Josh, I mean, obviously, they have some deficiencies on their end as far as Louisiana goes. Their starting quarterback is out. Beal is the quarterback now, and he was the quarterback during the championship game. And a lot of people remember when that was going on as far as Chandler Fields being knocked out of the game and so on and so forth. But I think that it should be a good matchup. What do you think as far as that one?
Yeah, I mean they've struggled out of the gate. I mean they're 1-3. Their only win was McNeese State, I believe, at home, and I think they experienced some departures themselves, much like we did, but they are really struggling in the passing game. I mean, just with this shade over 100 yards a game, through the air. So they've been very one-dimensional so far. Obviously, as a defense, that's what you want to do to offenses. So it kind of gives us a one-up. Not that we've been much better in the passing game ultimately. But, last week, obviously, kind of gave some hope to what we can see maybe moving forward. But, they've got a couple kids on offense. They had, the second team preseason all-conference running back, Bill Davis, I believe his name. He's been fairly effective, albeit he's their second leading rusher so far this season. And they had 2 offensive linemen on the second team preseason team. One thing up front, the rumors supposedly, and you never know what's true when it comes to those, but supposedly they're really beat up on the offensive front. So it'll be interesting to see, if that's true, and if so, just how much that impacts, what has been a slow to start offense so far this season for them. Defensively, they've got a couple kids just the same. They had a defensive lineman and a defensive back, both on the first team defense preseason. Both those guys have been pretty productive for them so far. And they have a linebacker that was second team. So they've got a guy at each level that has some playmaking ability. A little bit like Georgia was for us. Missouri was their outlier, and they lost 52-10 in that game. But in the rest of their games, outside of Eastern Michigan last week, which was on the road game, but giving up 34 points to Eastern Michigan obviously is a concern.
Yes.
So nothing against Eastern Michigan, but traditionally they're no powerhouse. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays. Like I said, it's a conference game. That's always a different situation. There's a different feel for those games. It's a road game. The thing that I feel the most comfortable with about is we're coming off a road game in which we played well, and like you said earlier, it kind of feels like we're kind of settling in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, we've got a couple guys, maybe get a couple guys back this week. Joe Sean Barbie missed last week. Prior to that, he'd been pretty productive. And then, defensively, actually another guy supposedly that may be back this week is Tony Mathis at running back. So, that'll give kind of another body back there. Besides getting Joe Sean back, and then on the defensive side, Jalen Parker at linebacker, supposedly he may be back this week, which will be good because Cannon Lewis went down a couple of times last week. Just from what conversations I've had this week, I think he's going to be okay. But obviously, that kid's incredibly tough, and for him to go out of the game, it obviously was kind of a lingering thing that he experienced twice in that game. So, hopefully Jalen's return will take some of the heat off of those guys at the linebacking, core, because, Jalen's not the only one that we have kind of missed some time so far. There's a couple other guys, and it's really thrown quite a workload on those other guys. It was good to see Jaden Johnson come in, late last week and have that big hit, there to kind of finish the game off defensively. I mean, he crushed the quarterback there on the sidelines. So
he did.
It's good to see some of those guys, getting another opportunity to produce in those situations, especially at a position that we need some help. But it's you never know. I mean, it's when it comes to road games. I mean, obviously we played down there, in the championship game and come away with a win there. But this is a completely different team, and a completely different mindset, to be honest. But
for sure,
I like our chances going down there. I like the steps that we took last week, and like I said, obviously they are still kind of in a spiral, it seems.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it, and it'll be a good precursor to what should be an excellent Sun Belt season all the way around. Now, it seems like around the belt, the teams are kind of struggling in some aspects. I mean, they obviously had like the big conference openers, and, there's been some games where some of the Sun Belt teams have struggled. But I do think that this is a very good test for Marshall going down to Louisiana and facing off with a Cajuns team that just appears to be on the ropes right now. And I think if the herd's going to strike and make some noise in the belt this year, then this is the game to do it. And the herd huddle chimed in. He said that Totten has been insanely good so far, and I agree 100%. I mean, anytime that you can have a punter flip the field like that and make the opposing team drive a long distance, it's certainly a welcome sight, and it helps the defense out tremendously when trying to get off the field. Real quick here, back to our trivia question. What former AEW world champion recently became part of the Dynamite announcing team? So you can chime in on either X or YouTube. The comment section is up. You can chime in. You can also send a DM to Runnin with the Herd on Facebook. That just popped up. So if you want to go to the AEW show in Huntington this Saturday, be sure to chime in on our trivia question. We're giving away 2 4-packs of tickets. This is for one of them. So the question is, again, what former AEW world champion recently became part of the Dynamite announcing team? That is our trivia question. Just answer it before the end of the show, and if you answer it correctly, you're going to be the winner of those tickets. So wanted to get that out there. Aaron Coleman, Josh Stowers, we are streaming live on both X and YouTube. It's the Running with the Herd podcast, powered up by Herd Nation and a part of the Rivals Network. You don't want to miss it. It's a great show. And I'll tell you, when you talk about some of the guys that are coming back from injury, I'll tell you a guy last week who stepped up when the running back room, who probably is the deepest position on the team, took a hit with a couple of guys out, and that's Michael Allen. Michael Allen stepped up in a big way, 21 carries, 90 yards, and that touchdown to go up 42-28 on the road. Talk a little bit about Mike and what he's been doing to put himself in a solid position to help contribute to the offense, Josh.
Yeah, he is obviously a transfer from NC State. Went through all of fall camp and kind of battled with Antoine Roberts and Joe Shawn and Justin Williams Thomas and those guys. And really obviously out of camp it looked like Antoine was going to ultimately be the guy. And I will give him some credit. Late in the game last week, I mean, he come in and had 2 really nice runs to really seal off that last drive. But Michael's he's an experienced guy. He kind of hard nosed when he runs the ball. I mean, he ran really tough last week. He caught the ball to the backfield that one time, kind of like a little swing pass. So it was good to see that. I hadn't really seen him catch the ball in the backfield a ton. So that just kind of adds a different dimension to him. But he's a very north-south guy. I mean, he's not somebody that's going to make a lot of people miss, but he might be able to run through a couple tackles. You don't see him losing yardage too often either, which, for a running back is a really important statistic that kind of goes unnoticed a lot of times. But, it was good to see him be effective like that. It's been interesting. At Georgia, we didn't really have anyone necessarily that was, kind of the guy. And then Eastern Michigan, or not Eastern, sorry, Missouri State, you had a couple guys, kind of split time, Joe Shawn and Justin. And then, against Eastern Kentucky, it was really, it was kind of the same deal. I mean, it was kind of like multiple guys. Justin had a really, the one catch and run for a touchdown that game where he ran that guy over. That was really impressive. But it's kind of been by committee so far at running back, but which is a good thing. I mean, you need depth. That's the one position. The shelf life for a running back, just about any level seems like it's very limited. So getting having guys that multiple guys that can produce and getting those guys back that have missed some time will be key going down the stretch here as we start conference play.
Yeah, and anytime that you have a Rod Smith offense where primarily running the ball is the strength of the team, you want to make sure you have that stable of running backs to make sure that you can move the ball effectively. And when you have Michael Allen, when you have Joshawn Barbie, Justin Williams Thomas, all those guys, you know, it definitely makes for a team that is adept at making sure that the other team doesn't have the ball. And that's the name of the game. So you also got to account for the quarterback as a runner, too. And Carlos Del Rio Wilson, he came in, transferred from Syracuse, 4-star recruit. Coach Gibson mentioned it before the season started. Like, he's at his best where he could go live and kind of, move around a little bit and kind of, do that RPO thing. And then he could kind of find his groove and then throw the ball off of that. What's been your what's been your take on Carlos so far?
With him, it was really just a situation of taking care of the ball. I mean, as far as talent goes, I mean, you've seen what he can do with his feet. I mean, he can move the ball pretty effectively there. He runs hard. Last week, he threw a couple balls that were just on the money. The ball he threw to Tamara's down there at the goal line for the touchdown. That was he threaded the needle there. That was a really great throw. The thing with Carlos was, going through camp was he was just turning the ball over entirely too much. And, as a quarterback, we just can't do that. You can't put the ball in the other team's hands. And he got a couple throws last week that, maybe he got a little bit adventurous with. I thought maybe against a better team may have been a problem. But, it's kind of like that gunslinger mentality. I mean, some of those guys just, they sling it and, see how the cards fall.
Right.
And some of those guys have been the best quarterbacks in the history of the game. So, if it's as long as you have the ability to, forget that play and move on to the next one and not let, an interception or something like that, bother you. Yeah, I don't have as much of a problem with it. I would prefer it not happen on our own side of the field or inside the red zone. Just to avoid, giving up bad field position or losing the opportunity to get some points. But I thought he played really well. Again, you gotta like the momentum that that he's carrying right now. He played well against Eastern Kentucky and followed it up with another great game last week. Got some national honors there with a couple of different recognitions. So that was good to see. But it's on to the next one. Last week doesn't matter really at this point, other than just building confidence and we got to take the next step forward and go to Louisiana and get the win this week.
Yeah, we certainly do. And I tell you what, when you have guys that step up, and you mentioned Tamarez there, who caught that pass at the end to kind of break away a little bit from Middle Tennessee. It was 28-28. He caught the ball. It was 35-28. When you have guys like Tamarez, Adrian Norton. EJ Norton was on the team a couple of years ago. Got the Nortons mixed up there. When you have Adrian Norton, DeAndre Tamarez, Floyd Lacey, Xavier Turner Bradshaw, those are four solid weapons in the pass game that Carlos can go to. And, of course, you have old reliable there, Toby Payne. Talk a little bit about that group, the receiver tight end room, and just a little bit about those guys kind of stepping up and kind of establishing themselves a little bit.
It's been something we've been waiting on. You saw some of those guys in camp do some things. And through the first couple games, you just hadn't really seen that. That could be just a matter of chemistry. It could be a matter of You know, the shuffle we had at quarterback going on there. I mean, did a couple different things play into that a little bit, but it was good to see. It was good to see a couple of those guys make some plays. You know, it's having a quarterback being able to, you know, practice is extremely important. Don't get me wrong, but it's just a different a different look, and you can prepare a ton. And don't, you know, obviously preparation is key, but I still think, you know, it's just a different animal when you get out there, and it's a different color jersey on the other side, and you know, things are moving at full speed, and it just you know, so it was good to see a couple of those guys. You know, the week before you had Adrian make that incredible catch there in the end zone. Yeah, that was that happened nearly right in front of where we were sitting at the time, and that was a great catch. And then, you know, last week you had Floyd, you know, make some catches and make some people miss, and then, you know, Tamarez there on the goal line, and then, like you said, Toby, who's just, you know what you're going to get out of that guy. He's going to play hard. He's going to be tough. He's going to catch the ball. You know, the last 2 weeks he's had a couple of really nice catches across the field, in the middle of the field, where he kind of had to go down and get it. You know, like I said, you know what you're going to get out of that guy. He's just consistent. But it was really important to see those other guys, you know, make some plays, because that opens up the field for the run game. I mean, you know, and especially when we're going, you know, with the quarterback run game, and it's truly, you know, 11 on 11, and you know, and those guys have the ability to stretch the field, and it kind of keeps the safeties back a little bit, and they can't come down into the box. You know, that makes, you know, the run game that much more effective. You know, something else that, you know, kind of off topic here a little bit, but, you know, a guy that, you know, I thought came in last week and did some nice things up front was Christian Richter. He spelled, you know, McDuffie there for a good bit of the second half. And I thought he played the week before too. But, you know, last week I thought he did some really nice things. So, you know, just wanted to give him a quick shout out and appreciate the effort and the production that he gave us last week.
For sure. And I'll tell you what, it's just been kind of a roller coaster ride this season for the Herd, but I think this is one of those periods of time where they're going to go up. They're going to ascend. They're going to do their thing. And if they play their game against Louisiana, they don't turn the ball over, tackle on defense, take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves, they should emerge victorious in that ball game. Before we wrap it up here, just wanted to give you guys one last chance on the live stream to win those tickets to the AEW show going on in Huntington this Saturday. The trivia question is, I was looking at my social media here to see if anyone had chimed in on X. I have not seen it thus far, but there's still time. What former AEW champion recently became part of the Dynamite announcing team? If you answer that correctly, you can win a 4-pack of tickets to the event in Huntington this Saturday. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great show. You definitely want to check that out. So, with that being said, I would say I'm not going to give a score prediction, but I'm saying the Herd wins. I'm saying the Herd wins in a close one. Any final thoughts from you, Josh, before we wrap it up today?
I don't really like giving score predictions myself either. You know, it's if we go down and play our game, you know, I think we'll be fine. You know, it's just a matter about, you know, putting your best foot forward. Yeah, and that's, don't get me wrong, I hate to lose. I mean, I don't like to lose it. You know, it could be trying to throw, you know, trash in a trash can from 5 feet away against someone. I don't like to lose, period. But you know, it's the most aggravating thing to me about, you know, losing is when you feel like you beat yourself. And
right,
if we can avoid that, you know, I don't know that there's a game on the schedule, you know, moving forward, you know, and I say this, 4 weeks into the season, kind of with everyone still at the same point we are, where they're trying to find themselves. I don't think there's a game on the schedule that we can't win if we, put our best foot forward in those games. It's I like the Herd's chances, with how we played last week on the road. And, it's, I've never been to Louisiana, last year for the championship game. It didn't seem like there was a lot of energy in that stadium then. Grant you, there wasn't a lot for them to cheer about in that game. Middle Tennessee is the same situation. That stadium is always just, it's just dead for whatever reason. There's never a lot of energy, and Tony mentioned it. He even talked about it in the post game. So it's good that we've been able to play in that type of environment, where we kind of really need to bring our own juice. And it's I don't know. Yeah, like I said, it's a road game, it's a conference game. Anything can happen, but I feel good about our chances, and especially if like I said, if we can get a couple of those guys back healthy, and it just adds to our roster. And it's I like the Herd.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. Special thanks to all the folks listening on both YouTube and X. Thanks to the folks that are from Herd Nation as part of the Rivals Network. For allowing us to
247.
247. Thank you very much, man. I've been out the loop. Stuff has been crazy lately. Anyways, thank you. 247 Sports Network. Thank you very much to Chris McLaughlin, Mike Gwynn, everybody over there. Looking forward to chiming in with you guys, talking a little bit about Herd Ball here very soon. And also thanks to the fine folks that gave us those 4 packs of tickets to give away to the wrestling show. It's going to be posted on the Herd Nation social media as well as my social media. So if you did not get a chance to chime in, listen to the archive. The questions will be posted up, and you'll get a chance to win a family 4-pack of tickets. And if you answer the question correctly, we will send you some information on how to get those tickets. For Josh Stowers, I'm Aaron Coleman saying thank you so much for listening and viewing. We certainly appreciate your time. Thanks again, and as always, go Herd.